Okay, we've just got the live stream up now. We are live on YouTube. Hi there, Glenn. You've just joined. I'm going to unmute you for a moment. Your audio works? Great. Great. I'm gonna mute you now, and I'll ask that just for now, unless you need to speak, that you keep your video off. Okay, we've just got the live stream up now. We are live on YouTube. Hi there, Glenn. Okay. We should be set. If you could turn off your video there, Glenn, just for now. And if you have any concerns while we can't see or hear you, please use the chat feature to get in touch with me. And I think we're good to proceed right now. If anyone, like I just did, has the live stream up while your audio is on as we go forward, if you're sort of watching it at the same time, make sure you mute it before you speak, or we'll end up with some feedback. Before we get going, I'll just say to everyone here on Zoom, as I've already been saying, as a reminder, please use the chat function if you do have any technical issues or any concerns during this open house, since I won't be able to see or hear you right now during my presentation or throughout the meeting. And please send a message to myself and Taya Devlin and Evan Och if you need some help, and one of us should be able to help you out. Again, as well, please only turn on your video when you're speaking. To everybody watching on our live stream, they will only be able to see you when your video is on, and we're trying to keep that screen less cluttered. And actually, that's it. And I'll just start the meeting now. Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you for coming to the online open house for 268 Oakdale. I'm Charlotte McEwen. I'm a planner at the city. Today, I believe we have four or five speakers today who will be having their turn to express their comments and their questions about the proposed zoning amendment at 268 Oakdale. They'll be expressing these to the attendees of this open house and those who are watching at home on our live stream. The attendees today, for everyone who can't see everybody who's on the call, we have Drew Toth, who's the owner of the property at 268 Oakdale. We have Kaylin Holmes, who is the agent for that applicant. Councillors Lori Littleton and Greg Miller are on the call, and the Director of Planning and Building Services, Tammy Kate, and Manager of Planning Services, Judy Pihak, are on the call. And we also have planners with the city, Evan Och and Taya Devlin, to provide any technical assistance. And I believe Glenn Barr as well, who is representing the applicant, is on the call as well. The open house is going to start with a presentation by myself, and I'll give you an overview of the proposal and the process. And after this presentation, I will call on our registered participants in the order that they registered, which is going to be Daniel Mellett, followed by Rick Bailey, followed by, it sounds like Dave Mullett and Heather Gilmore, and then Carrie Blair. After the speakers, I will outline the written submissions that we've received so far and vocalize any concerns that are in the written submissions that we haven't heard through the speakers. And then the applicant will have a chance to speak and provide any additional information at that time. And if there are no new concerns to be raised after the applicant has spoken, I'll ask the attendees if they have any concerns that are new after that. Then if there are none, we will make some closing remarks and the open house will end after that. If you have any questions or concerns that are raised after the open house, please get in touch with me by phone or email, and the conversation can still continue. And I'm going to begin a presentation now. Okay, This open house is regarding an application for a zoning bylaw amendment at 268 Oakdale Avenue. The open house is a way for us to provide you with information on the application, to clarify the process that is taking place, and the decision will be made by council on another date. No decisions are being made today. There will be a public meeting in front of council, and there will be another opportunity to speak and to submit comments to council at the public meeting, which you will be notified of when that is scheduled. To give an overview of the lands, this is the location of the parcel at 268 Oakdale. And we have an aerial view as well to provide some context. There are existing condominiums at 276 Oakdale to the north, 264 Oakdale to the south. The golf course is to the rear, and there is across Oakdale Avenue is the Merritt Trail there and a ravine. The proposal is for a 3-story apartment building as shown here on the conceptual site plan. There are 28 studio apartment units and 20 surface parking spaces are proposed at the rear of the building. These are some conceptual elevations of the building. For some policy context, we have the official plan designation of the lands here. It is high density residential. The high density residential designation is found all along Oakdale here, but I will note that it doesn't quite line up with what you may think the zoning is, because the zoning on this property is medium density residential. The official plan does allow for it to become high density. The zoning here is medium density residential, or R3. And here is an outline of the existing versus what is proposed for zoning. The R3 permits a density of 25 to 99 units per hectare, and the proposal is for 167 units per hectare, which is 28 units on this site. The lot frontage is proposed at approximately 13 meters, and there are 30 meters required in the R3 zone. The side yard setbacks are required to be 5 meters. There's 1.2 meters along the north side and 3 meters along the south. Landscaped open space is required to be 30%, and they have 22% proposed. The minimum parking is 1.25 parking spaces per unit, which would be 35 spaces. They have proposed 20 spaces, which is 0.7 spaces per unit. And there's a minimum landscape buffer around this size of parking area of 3 meters. And they have proposed about 0 along the south and 0.9 meters along the north. I visualized a few of these changes so you can see hopefully a little better. The frontage here is, it basically is the width of the property at the front. So you can see the arrows there. The side yard setbacks they're asking for along the north and south are visualized with arrows here. And then the areas where they're looking for a reduction in the buffer to the parking area are outlined in blue as well. The process right now is that we're at a point where the application has been circulated to applicable agencies. This has included Niagara Region, some utility companies, and all city departments. The staff are currently reviewing this application, and we will be making a recommendation to council based on planning policies and the input we receive. The planning report will be made available to you before the public meeting, and we will issue notice before that public meeting so that you're able to attend or ask to speak. We don't have a date for that yet, but it will be announced. At this time, I'm going to move on to our registered speakers, beginning with Daniel Melick. I'm just going to unmute you here, Daniel. Okay. You're unmuted, and you're welcome to please turn on your video. Yeah, and you are welcome to begin your statement.
Okay, I will start. Council members, Lori Littleton and Greg Miller, planner Charlotte McEwen, and others interested in the proposed development on the narrow lot at 268 Oakdale. I wish I could be brief, but the massive bylaw changes proposed for 268 Oakdale preclude that effort. So I will start by reminding all of the old adage, fences make good neighbors. And then I will add that good bylaws also make good neighbors. This city, the Garden City, has tried and true bylaws that allow for proper distances, parking, and all sorts of items to assist with helping developers, builders, and even dwelling owners make good neighbors to each other. And now we have better neighborhoods and Drew Toth who are whisking away aside many of those tried and true bylaws to build what I dub a dressed up Motel 6, or also what might be called a new Brock dormitory. So we have in the plan an Airbnb and student dormitory all in one. I take issue with the proposed changes to the bylaws as I will be affected by the lack of privacy. Having a prescribed landscape buffer of 3 meters shortened to 0 on the south side and 0.9 on the north basically eliminates that good neighbor rule. I take issue with the proposed changes to the bylaws regarding parking. I believe there will be confusion with those who can and those who cannot park when there is too little parking proposed in this development. The bylaws state that there must be visitor parking for every 4 units. And now I ask, how about those with 2 vehicles? Or in my case, I have 3 for my unit. What are they to do? It is the height of madness to assume that there will be less than a vehicle per unit. As for the transit justification, the connection to the Penn and on to Brock, as per 2.4 planning justification report, I'm going to seg for a little bit here. It does indicate that they are planning to be a Brock dormitory, and seg. However, I can say with authority that that particular bus route doesn't satisfy the timing connections, as my son-in-law ended up buying a vehicle just to go to Brock. He quite frequently was more than an hour to get there, and that meant 2 hours or more traveling to and from Brock. Subsequently, with COVID-19 and social distancing requirements, that could add even more waiting time. And with COVID-19, there are more and more people choosing vehicles over public transit, if I can say that properly. The other justification, biking. As for the theory of residents biking, I would just like to point out one thing. Biking is not a winter sport. So not the people buying in this proposed development, they will not be using a bike. Most will drive. There are going to be problems and issues with the lack of adequate parking. That will impact us and our property as they will gravitate to the properties adjacent. I have similar concerns in relation to the single lane for the entire length of the property, excepting, of course, the last few meters of the road, which is actually half city property. The necessities, groceries, pharmacies, and even pizza, although physically not very far away, only a mile or so, will necessitate Ubers and taxis to pick up and drop off people, those 1 or 2 that don't have a vehicle. This will lead to confusion and blocking of traffic in this single lane driveway. What about package deliveries such as Amazon, FedEx, UPS? They will also tie up this single lane. COVID-19 has increased the delivery model that will be in effect for years to come, perhaps even permanently. Even those that have vehicles will use this model extensively. I do occasionally. Can you imagine the cluster of vehicles requiring pizza delivery for a game day when 10 or more units require their food and snacks, and we have one single lane. Can you imagine a moving truck or an internet vehicle there for 1 or 2 hours, parked in the lane, connecting people or moving furniture up 3 floors? Chaos. What is a person to do if driving into the parking spot, trying to find a parking spot, and all of they are filled? How do they turn around? There's no space, so I assume they have to reverse all the way back into the road and then back into the fairly high traffic Oakdale Avenue. Or they could just drive on our property. I take issue with the open spaces, side yard setback, and lot frontage. By reducing this requirement, it puts our shade trees in jeopardy. Nowhere do I see in the proposed development a plan for the mature trees that are on the existing property line to be saved. The tree root radius required to keep these trees healthy is more than 2 meters. The distance requested for the side yard setback reduction. I can say the board of directors of 264 Oakdale unanimously agree. They do not, and they will never approve the removal of any trees. Any tree removal or tree killing by the developer would indicate that he is not a good neighbor. All this proposed development does is pave over most of the green space, leaving a tall building, magnifying and reflecting the heat and noise onto the north side of 264 Oakdale. As well, the driveway lighting for nighttime safety will beam light pollution directly into our units and balconies due to the reduction of the setback to 0. If the property had a proper lot frontage, there would be no need for a single lane. Reduction of open spaces, setback, and frontage requirements would indicate to me that the city of St. Catharines wants to remove the garden part of our garden city, and that would be sad. I also take issue with the proposed change of density. I believe the existing buildings were here, with the exception of Carson Court project, when the current zoning was implemented. The city planner successfully made an attempt to gradually reduce from R4 density to R1 in a reasonable fashion and reflect the existing structures. R4 high at 292 Oakdale and the property next. R3 medium to the 270 Oakdale and 264 Oakdale past Kapner Street. I believe the official plan used the R4 designation as a catch-all and to help the map look tidier and less chopped up. Therefore, I believe the official plan is actually an overview. However, the bylaws are correct where the rubber meets the road. I also take issue with some assumptions that the planning justification report has. For the sake of brevity, I will just list 2 more. In 2.3 Better Neighborhoods has indicated that they are just a 3-story building and indicate that we are too at 264 Oakdale. This is incorrect. 264 Oakdale is a 2.5-story building, and therefore the proposed development will be looking down into our balconies from a very, very close range, reducing our privacy. This, of course, would be mitigated with the proper buffers and setbacks in place. In 4.G.1.2, downsizing individuals to right size in their accommodation. I do not know of anybody that would voluntarily get rid of everything they own to move into a hotel room for the rest of their lives. Not many would downsize even into a single-bedroom condo. Perhaps Better Neighborhoods or Mr. Toth can find someone in all of Ontario that would want to right-size into a hotel room, but I do not know of anyone. I also have concerns about the capacity and traffic patterns of the entire length of Oakdale. If this and the various other proposed developments are completed, such as 10 Seymour, Meriton Commons, Canal Works, the Y Housing, 290 Oakdale, and the old hospital, and the infill that has happening in our neighborhood as well, as the various vacant lots abutting Oakdale, we have hundreds of housing units proposed. They will add significant traffic to all of Oakdale from Merritt Street to the Queenston-Tasker area. Already there have been accidents and near misses while vehicles attempt to enter and exit properties on the east side of Oakdale, partly due to the removal of the turn lane. In addition, this proposed development and others will make the situation worse. I also have concerns about the capacity of the city water and the sewer lines and of the hydro. Last week, we had 3 loss of electrical incidents. So what happens is if the demand is greater? Do we have enough water pressure to satisfy our needs and theirs? Is the sewer capacity adequate? And then a little question, whose property is a removed power pole going on? Because both 264 and 270 Oakdale have their own poles, and neither one of the neighbors needs that extra pole. On a somewhat personal note, our building, 264 Oakdale, has a number of your voters with health issues that would be increased due to the lack of distance between the proposed driveway and our windows and balconies. And indeed, all the north-facing residents will be subject to unmitigated exhaust gases and vehicle noise and the aforementioned driveway lighting beaming into our windows and balconies from this proposed development. I cannot see where Better Neighborhoods and Mr. Toth has provided any actions to mitigate the massive bylaw reduction requests, some even to 0, that will affect us all. This lot, 268 Oakdale, is a single dwelling wide lot. And had Mr. Toth purchased the vacant parcel at 290 Oakdale, beside Emerald Towers, he could fit his project in without these many bylaw changes that are required. I believe it is proper and right to make the plan fit the property, and therefore not correct to make the bylaws fit the plan. And finally, I would like to remind you that fences and bylaws make for good neighbors. And last, I can say with confidence that the proposed development will negatively affect all the units in 264 Oakdale. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Daniel. I just want to clarify, because I didn't say this on your intro, but you are representing the condo at 264 Oakdale, is that correct? Or are you representing yourself at this time?
I'm representing both, I guess.
Okay. And that's Daniel Mellick. Okay, well, thank you for your time. I'm going to mute you again, if that's all right. And I'm going to on to Rick Bailey here. Rick, you're welcome to turn on your video, and I'm going to ask you to unmute, and you're welcome now to make your statement.
Okay, good afternoon, all. Unfortunately, I don't remember all your names, but I'm saying hi. My name is Rick Bailey, and I'd just like to start with the fact that I hope that what we're doing here today is not an exercise in futility, and you actually take our concerns to heart. And when you go back to council, that you'll exercise due diligence that all these concerns deserve. And that's another thing from my point of view. I've before I retired, I was in the engineering department. We had a lot of projects that we did throughout our company, and one of the things that was part of that project list was fail-safing, and I actually headed up that part of it. So it was my job to make sure anything that we built or put in and was turned over to operations or maintenance personnel, that no harm will ever come to based on what we put in. That was a priority for us, and we did everything that we could, using all the tools that we could, to ensure that we put in a safe installation. And then when I look at this project going in here, I don't see that as a safe installation in my mind. And and actually Dave before me touched on quite a few of the concerns, and maybe I'll just reiterate some of my concerns that probably might be duplication. And the first thing is this one-lane driveway going in and out. I see it, that raises all kinds of red flags. You could talk about cars, just cars alone. It's only 3 meters wide. It's not very wide. And if you talk about a car and then you've got pedestrian traffic potentially, there's not much room for both. But then we get into the emergency vehicles, ambulances, fire trucks, anything like that. Now, I went online and looked at a typical fire truck, and what was the width of the fire truck? Typically was about 2.54 meters. So it's almost the same width as the lane that is being proposed, the one lane. And if they ever are called to do something, they're going to be in that lane and they're going to be tight to work, whatever they have to do. And if they have to overshoot the building and go into the back parking lot, how do they turn around? Where do they go? There's just no way, especially if there's going to be cars there. It's going to be tight for them. And if we talk about the garbage truck. Garbage truck is a necessity for every condo building. That one will be no different. I'm not quite sure how it's all going to work, but the same thing applies. A garbage truck is pretty well the same width as a fire truck. And if it has to go down that one lane access way, it's just going to be jammed up to no end. It just won't be able to be done. Now, I understand that there is a waste disposal on the northwest corner, I believe, and I have no idea how a garbage truck is going to be able to maneuver himself into that area in order to remove the garbage properly. So I can see that as a concern. And then, of course, I don't see any handicap access. Is there going to be? What do? I know you put in two parking spaces for handicapped people, which is good. I like that. But then how do they get there if they're in a wheelchair or anything? Or is that even a concern because you figure that the only people who are going to be there is just young people and they don't have these issues? Well, I can tell you right now, young people have handicap issues as well. So, and this is something that'll probably be brought up later, is what happens if a fire does start, especially on our side. And my side is on 276 Oakdale. So I'm on the north side of the building. And their north side is maybe on fire and it needs a fire truck to address it. Where does the fire truck go? It's going to be going into our property and then handling whatever it needs to handle. Okay, so I guess the points that I'm getting at, a lot of the emergency vehicles are going to have to use other people's lands in order to maybe do what they need to do and do it effectively. And then you get into snow removal. Where are we pushing the snow? There's zero meters clearance on the south side of the building between 264 and this new proposal. You just can't dump snow onto their property. You just can't do that. So you have to push it to the back. Well, where are you going to push it to the back? You've only got 20 spaces there. You just wouldn't be able to do it. So from a fail-safe perspective and from a safety perspective, I don't see this as a very good proposal. And I haven't even started about maybe the building itself. I'm just doing all the exterior and things that I see that could be a problem. And I'm sure there's a lot more, but I'm going to leave it up to my colleague to maybe address some of those issues. So with that, I'll just say thank you and hope our voices will be heard. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Rick. Thank you. I will mute you now. You can stay on, of course, and you can turn off your video. And next up, Heather, I'm going to unmute you and you can turn on your video. And I believe we're going to hear from Dave Mullet there. You can introduce yourself and again, mention who you're representing. I will also note that I believe you submitted an image. Just let me know if you want anything put up on the screen.
Okay.
But yeah, just turn on your video and you can go ahead.
Okay, so I'm Heather Gilmore. We represent 276 Oakdale Avenue, and I'm going to have Dave Mullet speak. I'm just going to turn the computer so you can see him.
Good afternoon. My name is Dave Mullet, and I have to agree with the first two people that spoke, and they've taken a number of things that I'm going to be going over, just repeating myself, with them. I'm quite surprised that they did a pretty good job based on what we were looking at. Our problem here is that over the years that I've lived here, approximately 13 years at 276 Oakdale, one of the problems that we've had is water getting into our parking area from next door, which will be 268, I guess, if it's built. And it's causing us numerous problems, especially in the winter time. What happens, it freezes, and people that try to get into their automobiles, it just doesn't work. They're slipping and falling. So consequently, what we have to do to alleviate that is try to put down salt or put them into what the visitors parking. This takes approximately 5 or 6 or 7 vehicles in our parking spot that gets into this situation with ice forming in the wintertime, and it all comes from next door. Maybe it's the way it's graded, I don't know. So what we would be looking at is what type of diversion or channeling or whatever is going to take this water away when this building is put up. I think that's important, and I think that should be something that definitely should be looked at because it does cause us a problem. Now, another thing where we have a problem is we have a fence that runs through the length of the property up from that 264, from one end of our property to the street side. And the problem we have with that is if he puts up that building, he's only offering us basically 4 feet away from the fence, and then his building, the back of his building will be there. And the problem is, what are they going to do so that if we had to replace that fence, how could we get in there to even replace it once it comes down? And we know, I've talked to Drew, and that he's going to take that fence down if he starts his construction, because that'll be a necessity. And I'm hoping that if that happens, that fence will definitely be replaced by him, not by us. And the thing is that we would like to know, what is he going to put down between that building and that fence to stop the water from coming onto our property? The other situation that we've had here over a number of years is when he started to put this situation together, and he had that little, I guess it was kind of what it was going to look like a trailer. And he had it basically the same size. I think it's 290 square feet. The problem we had every time that we exited our driveway, we had a problem because that was there. It blocked our view because, you know, there's a number of cars, over 400 cars coming out of this side of Oakdale Avenue. And we're sitting right on the curve, right where Carson Court is. And it's caused us all kinds of problems. As a matter of fact, we've had 3 accidents come out of there over the years, 2 where people were slightly injured, and 1 where a guy just drove through our brick wall.
Show that if you want her to show it.
Big part.
Just show that picture. If you
Yeah, we sent that picture along with our petition. Did you see that?
I did, and I can put it up now if you'd like to share it. I know that Heather had asked.
Okay. It's just that those are the type of things that we're a little leery of with people coming down Oakdale Avenue, because right now, Oakdale Avenue is sort of opened up as a freeway down to the 406. And the speed limit we had posted by from Lori Littleton was 50 at one end at Lincoln and 50 down at Westchester. That is absolutely meaningless. That speed limit down there has been between 60 and 80 kilometers every day. Where'd they go?
Sorry, here's the, you should be able to see the picture you sent in. Yeah.
That's where the guy drove right through our brick wall. We were fortunate that there was no cars on the other side. And the other fortunate thing is we have 4 people in here every morning that walk their dogs, and one of them could have been out at that particular time, and that would have been the end of it for sure. Just to give you an idea of the excessive speed that we're dealing with on Oakdale, especially coming around that curve. So if he puts what he thinks is that, from what I understand, the garbage container might be out up front. If he puts that up front, that's going to block our view more than it is already. So we'd like him to be aware of that, or you to be aware of that when you put this proposal together. The other thing that we're looking at is if you put a building up that looks like a, excuse the expression, a glorified hotel, basically what happens is we have a brick building on one side, a brick building on the other, and this sitting in the middle. And as far as we're concerned, this adds nothing to the street itself as far as everybody working their way to make the street look a little better based on the reputation that it's had in the past. And let's see. The other thing we're looking at, he's going to have to put lighting into that parking lot at the back of his, if this thing goes through. We would like to know which way is that lighting going to extend? Is it going to hurt 268 or is it going to hit 276? We want to be aware of that because that's only going to cause us problems. And the other thing too that we all think about in here with the 50 people that sign a petition, our property value. He's putting up a unit, from what I understand, is 290 square feet. It's going to be about $150,000 to buy one. And to me, basically, that's going to be like a B&B, or people are going to buy it and rent it out, or people are owners are going to be mother and father, the son or the daughter going to Brock, so they'll stay there for the time being. And we just want to know if that's what we're going to end up with, because that definitely is going to do something to harm our property values. And the other thing that we're thinking about with the one lane in, one lane out, what does he do with snow removal? You're going to have something for that. So you're not, and the bottom line is, even if you could get a snow plow in there, or even a pickup truck with a snow plow on the front of it, where do you put it? You can't put it up front, you can't put it at the back because you got approximately 20 cars parked back there. So that's something else we're concerned with. How does that going to work? And the other thing we're concerned with, if there is a fire, what type of what would you call it? Access emergency evacuation. People coming out of that building. Has he got anything put in for that? Is there sprinkler systems going into this building? You follow me? Yeah. So consequently, all the other things that were brought up by Don and by the other parties, that's I could go through all that. I think the zoning is ridiculous. I don't know how it ever got past the planning board with that type of zoning, but it is what it is. But that's what our complaints are. I can reiterate what everybody else has said, but I don't think that's necessary. You pretty well know how everybody feels here. So I guess I would just wrap it up on that basis to say, thank you, and I hope it doesn't go up.
Thank you, Dave. And just to clarify, that's the only person speaking from this account, correct? It's just.
What's that? Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Then I'm going to mute you again. Thank you for your input, and I'll ask you to turn off your video. We have one more speaker. So we'll go to her. We're going to have Carrie Blair. I'm going to ask you to unmute and turn on your video, Carrie, if you are able to participate. Your conference call is done.
Yeah, thank you, Charlotte, for including me on this. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Carrie, and I'm one of the residents at 264 Oakdale. I just wanted to mention a couple of my personal concerns, which have all basically been addressed by all of the other speakers, but I want to reiterate my concerns. So I guess I'm on the ground floor, which is partially below grade at 264. So at first, my biggest concern was flooding. And Charlotte, you had put me in contact with one of the engineers that had sent me an email, which I appreciate. I'm still concerned about it. I kind of compare some of this to, I know we're a lot smaller scale, but the city of Toronto, they have, obviously a lot of high-rise, high-density buildings, and they have constant issues with flooding when we have, some extreme weather events. So that's just a constant concern of mine. Another concern, like other people have mentioned, has been snow removal and the storage of the snow. Our property usually has a couple parking spots that they utilize to store the snow in the winter months. Doesn't seem like that is available at this property, so I'm not sure what's going to happen. I also wasn't sure if there was going to be a fence in between the properties, because otherwise, if they plow, the snow is just going to pile up on to the property at 264. So that's a concern of mine. Another concern would be the traffic, which other people have mentioned. I work in environmental consulting, in particular waste management, so I do understand some of the challenges in that specific sector. So I understand the waste removal is going to take place at the front of the property. With that being said, what makes most sense in my mind is the collection vehicle would pull in and then they would have to reverse out onto Oakdale. I could be wrong if you want to clarify, but in that case, like Oakdale is a relatively busy street and also has a bike lane, so it does pose a pretty big hazard in my eyes. Another thing that I've noticed in particular, now that COVID-19 has happened, I've been working from home for a couple of months. At our property, there's just constant delivery trucks in and out. So that I would expect just the general traffic with the one lane would be problematic. From my personal experience, when I get groceries, I usually just stop at the door so I don't have to carry all of my groceries from my parking spot. That might just make a bigger challenge for some of the residents on that property. I'm concerned about if there's going to be any parking hazards, and this might, if there is going to be a fence or not, I'm not sure if that's a thing, but if there isn't a fence, I'm concerned that the cars backing up or traveling through the back limited parking lot are going to potentially hit some of our vehicles on our property. It's just a general concern of mine. And then another concern would just be the removal of the limited amount of green space that we have towards the front end of the property. I just don't want to see any of it go because we're pretty limited as it is. So that in general, that I just hope you guys can take my thoughts seriously and consider it in your decision.
Thank you, Carrie. And I will mention that I'm not intending to provide a response or a rebuttal to anybody's comments, but generally you asked if a fence would be required, and it is a general requirement of this sort of development that has to go through a site plan process that we would require a fence around the property. But yeah, that would be expected. We're not at that stage yet, but that's a detail that usually would be included.
Thanks.
Thank you for your time. I'm going to mute you and you can turn off your video. I'm going to take this over again just for a moment before we have the applicant speak. I'll go over the written submissions we've received. Because we are doing this online, we've received a high number of written submissions. This is kind of new to a lot of people. So I'll outline, we did receive 2 petitions, generally one from each condominium, one at 264, one at 276 Oakdale, I believe is sort of how it's divided out. We also received 22 written submissions, a couple of which were submitted by people who have also spoken today. And out of those written submissions that we've received, generally the concerns have been pretty consistent with what we've heard today. I'll just highlight for those especially who are watching at home and maybe submitted just a few other concerns that were raised. They include the potential for noise from the residents that will move into this proposed development. There's concern about the aesthetics of the building. There are a few concerns about the impact construction will have on the properties and on the quality of life of the current residents. There's concern that fumes from cars going in and out of the driveway will affect the residents. There are concerns that there are 4 accessible units proposed and only 2 accessible parking spaces in the parking lot. And there is a concern in general, of future residents trespassing or using the garbage facilities on neighboring properties. Otherwise, we have heard the majority in this session today. Again, for everyone at home, if anybody has not felt their concern was expressed today, please get in touch with me after the open house, and we will continue to be taking resident submissions or public submissions on this, and up to and including the public meeting in front of council. And the written submissions will be made available to council, and that includes the petitions that have been submitted so far. Also, just want to note, as I just did, that we aren't necessarily getting to resolve all the issues today. We are hearing the issues today. It's so that we're able to hear your input, and so then we're able to conduct a very informed and complete review of the proposal with your input as well. So the applicant is going to speak now, and after that, I will ask everybody to provide questions through the chat if you have any new concerns. If you have just general questions, I would ask that you provide them to me after the open house. It's not very conducive over Zoom to end up in a sort of conversation format with this many people. So if you'd like any other questions answered, I'll ask that you send them to me over email, and we'll do our best to get our answers to you or from the applicant to you. And now I will unmute Drew Toth, and I'm going to unmute you, Kaylin Holmes, as well. And hopefully you guys can sort of manage that together. Just one moment. Drew and Kaylin. Okay. I can't hear you right now, Drew.
Now?
Yeah, I can hear you now. And Kaylin?
Oh, good. Thank you.
Hi. Great. Okay. You guys can take it away.
Thanks, Charlotte. First, I'd just like to start by thanking all the neighbors for their keen interest, the feedback, the letters, and involvement with this project. I want you to know I've been keenly listening, taking some notes, and if after today, if you'd like to meet with me one-on-one in a Zoom format or in another socially distant safe method to talk further about any of the concerns that you have, or some of the things that we have done to address some of the safety or functionality of the site, I'd be happy to spend that time with you. I'm not sure what the best way is to get my email out, so I'll verbally tell you. And then I think everybody has Charlotte's email. Charlotte, would you be able to share my email if anyone asks you for it?
I can do that, yeah, with your permission. Absolutely.
So my email is Drew, DREW, at Toth, TOTH, group, GROUP.ca. Now, I recognize many of the speakers, and I recognize the names from some of the letters. I've had the pleasure of meeting with the different condo boards over the last year and a half. And I think for a starting point, all of us can really agree that we want to see what's best for the local neighborhood. Now, I think we can also agree there will be some points that we don't agree on. But I will commit to you always to listening, considering, and contemplating any feedback that's sent to me. I will always respect you, work with you, and be the best neighbor that I can be to work to resolve any issues that come up, as all neighbors have to do. In the same spirit, I would ask that you genuinely listen to what we're trying to accomplish, seek understanding, contemplate it, and reach out to me if you do want to chat more. This by no means is a standard design. It's nothing that's been done in St. Catharines before, and I expected that I would have some resistance and a whole lot of questions. But I do want to assure you that it does incorporate proven, safe, functional methods from other places throughout North America and Europe. I would like you to know that the vision for this project has actually accumulated over the last 15 years of my life working at trying to figure out solutions that are actually economically feasible for affordable housing. I've worked for 8 years in a homeless shelter in various roles, including the executive director, worked with many nonprofits, government agents, trying to tackle the problem of affordable housing, which, as many of us know, in Niagara over the last 5 years have become more and more of a problem. And if you look at the trajectory based on income level, average income level in Niagara, and average housing pricing, over the last 20 years, it's actually made a complete V. And as it continues on this trajectory, hasn't been many solutions that we've been able to come up with to help slow some of that expansion of the V down. And I'm really excited about this project because it's actually an economically viable project that allows people to enter home ownership. Is it perfect? No, it's not. Is it a silver bullet? No, it's not. Is it for everyone? For sure it's not. But it is one solution that actually works. It's an opportunity for 28 individuals to enter the housing market, own at the cost of renting, and have the chance to have the pride of home ownership and grow their personal net worth, which I believe every Canadian and every individual in Niagara should have that opportunity. As the Minister of Housing wrote in this report, we need more homes, we need more options. This is a new option, it's a viable option, it's a good option, and I want to assure you I've assembled a great team of consultants and experts in their respective fields on the design and implementation of this project. I'd like to just address some of those concerns because those are some of the exact same things that we have been wrestling through and asking ourselves, how does this work? How will this actually function and be safe? First of all, let's start with the big safety issues. Fire safety. For sure, we're not going to compromise fire safety. It is the law. The Ontario Building Code dictates what we have to build to for fire safety. It's not up for debate. We are not asking for any exceptions on that, period. The next subject that I've talked to many different individuals about is trees, specifically the trees on the property line of 264 and 268, my property. I know many of you told me you thought I would just show up with a chainsaw and cut them down. But I've been meeting with a few residents on site with our consultants. Many developers would just sort of show up and cut them down. I'm not interested in being that kind of neighbor to you. We've ordered a survey to determine the true location and ownership of the trees, which has now been completed. We have hired an arborist to identify the species and the health of the trees. We're awaiting the results, and once we have them together, we plan to work with you to address this issue further. But we're not interested in just showing up and cutting them down. We need to figure out something that works for both of us. I've heard many mentions of the concern about accessibility, which is a major concern. Again, this is addressed by law in the Ontario Building Code. The 2018 version dictates that 15% of our units have to be built to accessibly friendly units. We have incorporated that and we'll design that into our building. The next one I've heard about is snow removal. Makes sense to me. With a zero landscape buffer, if you're pushing a plow down, how does that not come off the side and enter on your side of the property? Well, I can tell you that in many urban neighborhoods and tight settings with zero landscape buffers, they don't use a plow. They have to use a scoop. The snow needs to be scooped and it needs to be trucked and hauled off the site. That is how we will deal with the snow. It's the only way that actually works in a situation like this, and it works in many, many sites across Ontario. The next one that I want to talk about is flooding. I'm very aware of that site. I've got a soaker in my running shoes when I've been on the property, talking to some of you guys as neighbors. For a long time, that site has been pooling water, mainly in the spring, also in the fall and in the winter melt off. Well, the good news is our development will actually solve that problem. So I have my civil engineer who's on the Zoom call. He can speak to it. We will also work with the city's civil engineer with a storm catch basin. So we'll grade everything into a catch basin and we'll pipe it with big O, a large pipe, out to the front of the street, into the storm sewer and carry it away. And so that problem, our development actually solves. Glenn, did you want to speak to that just from someone who is a civil engineer?
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yeah, do you mind turning on your video there, Glenn? Perfect.
Here we are, yeah. When the region reconstructed Oakdale Avenue, I guess that was only, what, 3 or 4 years ago. They put in new facilities, new pipes and so on into the street, and they provided a sanitary outlet for this site, a water outlet, water connection for it, for sprinkler system, for fire protection, as well as domestic supply. And they supply a connection for stormwater. So the present conditions of the site can be resolved as a result of doing the development and incorporating the infrastructure into the development and connect to those pipes, which were designed just for that.
Okay, are you done, Glenn?
I'm done, yeah.
Perfect, perfect. I will just mute you again. I think I have to unmute Drew again here. There we go.
Charlotte, when you circulated this for comments, was there any concern from a capacity standpoint from any of the city staff or civil engineers on staff?
I don't know that there has been a concern, but I believe there's still sort of information required as we go forward on this kind of thing. But I don't have their comments in front of me. But we would certainly address that through the review.
Yeah, so
it will be addressed in staff report.
Yeah, we won't be able to put the shovel in the ground unless the capacity issue is approved through the experts at the city.
Yeah, if I may just add in, and Charlotte, you can confirm that I have this right, but typically that is something that we look at in a lot more detail during the site plan approval process.
Kaylin, while you're speaking, can you address the waste issue comments?
Sure. So the waste collection will take place on Oakdale Avenue, just as the regional kind of collection takes place. They don't go into the site at all. So a building manager from the building will pull the bins out and it will be collected from Oakdale. So just as it collects from all the other residences who bring their bins to Oakdale up that street, it will happen there, and the traffic will have to wait behind it as it always does on Oakdale Avenue. That's it for me.
Okay, next issue. I'm hearing a lot about students, and I just want to address the student piece. We by no means are trying to create a student residence, a Brock residence, a Niagara College residence. If I was designing a building for students, I would design it as 4-bedroom apartments with their own bathrooms and 1 kitchen. Many of my colleagues build student rentals, and the design that is being requested and is most filled and profitable for student rentals is 4-bedroom apartments, their own bathrooms and 1 kitchens. This is not that design. Will potentially a student buy a place, a grad student, and live here? Maybe. We can't discriminate against students. That being said, I think the concern is not necessarily the students, but some of the perceived behavior. I grew up on Marlene Drive, which probably most of you guys will know. My folks actually still live there. It's 3 streets up from the Penn Center off Glendale. Glendale and Glenridge, maybe more of the concern is the feel of St. Patrick's Day on the corner of Glenridge and Glendale, sort of partying, beer bottles, loud noise. I think it's more of the perceived behavior that may be the concern. I'd love for you guys to respond and we can dialogue about that. But the great thing about a condo structure is that behavior can be enforced and governed through that condo structure. Again, in no way, shape, or form are we trying to create a student residence. We are looking to create an option for people to enter home ownership. Next one I hear is construction. For sure, living beside this site while construction is going on is going to be a nuisance. Let's call a spade a spade. Every time I drive down the 406 and the Rankin is still working away and I'm slowed down to 1 lane and, I'm backed up in traffic doing, maybe 30 when it should be 100. That's frustrating. When there's construction beside my home or beside another home, that is frustrating. I'm not going to tell you it's not, but what I would urge you to consider is that the home that you live in at one point was constructed. The neighbors beside you were inconvenienced while it was being built. But there's no other way for us to build and construct homes that we live in unless we put up temporarily with the nuisance of construction. What else? Next one here. There's been a lot of critique about the size of these units, the 300 square foot model. There was letters and comments that, no one would live here and it doesn't work. This is a very popular proven strategy in Montreal, Toronto, throughout Europe, New York, San Francisco, many cities, Chicago, and many people choose to live in a 300 square foot space. I did build, as you know, the model unit. I'd urge if any of you guys would like to come out and see it, please contact me. I'd be happy to show you through it. We've taken a lot of time on the design. It's very functional, it's very sharp, and it works. Is it for everyone? For sure it's not. Me and my 4 children are not moving into that with my wife. Never will happen. Some single individuals will not want to choose to live in that space. But for some people, it's a great solution and it really works. Next one. There's been a lot of concern about traffic on Oakdale Avenue, the capacity to handle the traffic that 28 more units will bring. So I have asked other consultants and experts about this question since I've been approached with it. My understanding is typically the size of this roadway handles about 10 to 15,000 car trips per day. We would have roughly 80 car trips based off of 20 parking spaces, which will represent 0.002 of this traffic. And my understanding of this road has capacity for many, many times this. The city has studies. They have experts that look after calculating proper traffic capacity and safety for the citizens. I would ask that you inquire with the city, or if you'd like to speak to me or any data that I had from my consultants, I would be happy to share that with you as well. The next thing going along, continuing with traffic, I know, Dave, you showed me that picture of the broken down entrance, the brick entrance there to your unit. Very, very much a shame. And we talked about it at that time. That was a drunk driver. I mean, God forbid any of us is walking down the street and a drunk driver comes, but my development and the impact of someone speeding down the road or a drunk driver, in fairness, that has nothing to do with whether my building ever goes there or not. That's a threat to all of our safety. The next issue is about parking. Great question. Okay, so does our parking capacity of 20 units actually provide a functional site and living space when there's 28 units? And we have done research on this, and we understand that especially at different levels of income and different individuals, there are individuals that don't own cars. They either walk, they take the bus, they drive a scooter, they may bicycle. There is demographics. So we will not sell to anyone that does not have an assigned parking space. So those specific units will be assigned, and any extra traffic we would enforce. And I'm going to tell you, will someone never park on 276 or 264? I think that is just a management issue. There may need to be a tow if someone, goes outside of that or a visitor, but after someone is towed or that's enforced, that issue will clear itself off. I've owned many different rental spaces, some commercial spaces, residential. I've had overflow traffic before parking in my lots. Simply managing it with, a tow truck or two once or twice nips that in the butt, and word goes out. No one parks there, else your car disappears. Next one is property value. As a developer, when I'm doing infill development in existing neighborhoods, I always get neighbors and people bringing this concern to me. If you're happy to show you specific examples of neighborhoods that I have previously built in St. Catharines, and other developers have, I can show you the costs of homes that have sold or condos in that area, that when new things are built, typically what we see is the values going up, not the values going down. So if you're interested in having a dialogue, I would encourage you to speak to realtors or maybe some other people that are in the real estate industry. I'd be happy to share that data with you as well. I think I've almost covered all of them. Oh, one more. The single lane driveway. I didn't want to skip over that one. I have it in my notes here. So we have studied this model. There's other examples throughout Ontario where this model has worked, it has functioned, and it has done well. Glenn, did you want to talk to the single lane driveway at all, from your opinion?
Oh, now I'm on. Now you can hear me, I trust. Okay. Practically speaking, what happens with a single lane driveway, and we have a few of these instances in St. Catharines, as a matter of fact, and that is that the people within the building, the culture within the building, get used to it. And so typically, if you've got 20 cars that can park in the back, you would find, say, in the morning, maybe say 8 or 9 of those cars would leave during the course of the busy morning, like between 8 o'clock or 9 o'clock or 7 o'clock and 8:30, somewhere in there. So that's really what that is that's one for every 5 or 6 minutes. And people get to be friendly back and forth, and they use it. By the way, the driveway is also used for pedestrians. So in the culture of the building, it becomes normal for them. So the one-way laneway is really not a problem for the people within it. Now, you will get visitors every once in a while that will get confused, but that's once in a blue moon. And I think you'd find that systems like this function really well. Really good parallel to it is a place where I go in the summertime. My daughter's cottage up in Muskoka, and they have one-way fire lanes in, serving maybe 30, 40, 50 cottages. And all everybody does is it's the culture there. They just move over. They back up sometimes. They do whatever they have to do, and it's a friendly way of doing it. So I don't think that this is a problem at all. What we've done from a functional point of view to be careful with this is that we have put 2 spaces in the front so that you can see that it's widened at the front. So you can have two cars waiting to get to the back while somebody pulls out to the front. So we've covered the vast majority of options in case somebody wants to go one way at the same time as going the other way. So we think we've created a functional laneway.
Thank you, Glenn. You have anything else here, Drew?
I'll just get wrapping it up. Another single lane that comes to mind is between Cherry and St. Paul West that has been there for quite a long time. I think many of us have probably driven through it, and that's sort of a culturally adapted laneway in the city as well. Okay, I think that's all I have. There was a couple other things. In wrapping this up, I do want to let you guys know I have reserved some of these units. One is a restaurant owner that's rarely ever home, single guy. Another is a senior on a pension. Another is a gentleman that's a framer. He's in his 20s, doesn't own a vehicle, bikes to work. So there's several different members of the community that have already shown interest, and so far no students. To give you an idea of sort of where the response has been so far. I really believe that this will be a great option for many members in the community. Making room for change in others is not easy. I would ask that before you say no in my backyard, please allow us to show you the work and research that has gone into this design to address the safety and functionality of the site. It's not a traditional design, and that is the key to this whole project. It's something new. It's something innovative. If we're going to address affordable housing issues, we must try things that we have not before, because what we're doing so far is not working. I can assure you, for the last year and a half, we have worked hard to ensure that this site is safe and functional. And I would be happy, and I would even propose that as your board and my team, 264 Oakdale and 274 Oakdale, that we would meet again to go through any of these issues, maybe in a deeper dive before this heads to council, to see if we can address or resolve any of these issues by working together as neighbors. Thank you.
Thank you, Drew. And I will go on to say that this is, again, just the open house. It's where we're getting your input. So we are hoping to hear from you all. And of course, we are going to consider all these issues very closely, city staff, and I'm sure council, before a decision is made. And all of the review and all of the information is not being completed or completely gathered. So that is an ongoing effort, and we thank you for participating. I'm just going to actually quickly go to Kaylin Holmes, the agent for the applicant. She has a couple of things she'd like to say here. And before we go to you, Kaylin, I also want to mention, if anyone has any new concerns that were raised from hearing the applicant speak, please message me through the chat. But we're not going to move into a dialogue here. It's, again, very difficult on the Zoom format. So please also consider sending in any concerns or questions that were raised just now through to me via email or give me a call. And we'll definitely continue to work on that and have an ongoing conversation. Here is Kaylin.
Thanks, Charlotte. Yeah, I'll just encourage everyone to do that, to send it into Charlotte, because the next steps for us are going to be to review all the concerns that we've heard today and that we've seen in the letters. I've already started going through those and trying to kind of pinpoint each and every one of those concerns that are coming up, and then look at our plans and see if there's not a way that we can't improve them any further to address those items. And we'll provide kind of a more robust response at council, where we'll expect our councillors to weigh both the efforts that we've made and the needs of the residents of the whole city, as well as you, the neighbors, and how you will be impacted by that. And as Charlotte says, if we do get the zoning approval, we still have the site plan approval process to go through, where a lot of these items will be more will be further reviewed by the city and addressed by us. Thanks again.
Thank you, Kaylin. And one more thing before I wrap up. I haven't received any chats right now, but I had a couple images that were sent through by a resident, Doreen Milligan, who she wanted me just to put them up on the screen, and that's one thing I hadn't done yet. So I'm just going to quickly share my screen here. She has some context photos of the site. So we've got, hopefully you can see this here. We have an overview of the site. I believe this was taken by drone, and it shows, you can see, it was focusing on the condo 264 to the south, but this strip of land is the green space on the right of the condo in the middle. We also had a view from across the street here that shows this property 260 Oakdale head on. And this was taken recently. You can see the public meeting sign in the front. And she also provided a view across the front of 264 Oakdale, the condo to the south, from their front parking area across to the fence that abuts 276 Oakdale. This property that we're dealing with is in between. So these were just some context photos that were provided, and she wished to be shared today. But I have one more addition from Glenn Barr here. I'm going to unmute him, and you can turn on your video here, Glenn. You're
Not letting me start. Oh, there we are. It's not letting me start the video, but so maybe I'll go without the video. Okay, can you hear me?
I think I need to just resolve that. There you go.
There we are. It's amazing how quickly we learn, eh? You know, I've been in many public hearings and developments and so forth through the years. And one of the things that I find happens is that we get you know, designers like ourselves pour ourselves into the design and come up with the best thing we can do. And the developer deals with that and works on the economics, and they also have their vision and so forth. So and then we go and we put it through the public process like we're doing now. But what we never do is we say, okay, well, if we can't do that, what can we do? So historically, if you take a look at this site, I mean, this site's only, I don't know, 43, 44 feet wide by several hundred feet long. Historically, this site, it was developed, the one to the east was, I think, developed first. The one to the north was then developed, and then they left this as an orphan. Now, nowadays in planning, I think these were done during the probably the 1950s, 60s, or 70s. We just don't do that now. We don't leave orphan properties, okay? But we did, the historical context is that this was left as an orphan property, okay? At the same time, what happened was, and just incidental to that, is that both properties cut off the natural drainage, and so that's why it's all ponding now. Okay, now we're going to solve that ponding with the development of the property. But what we aren't doing yet, that's what this project does, is that it solves the historical dilemma about how you make good use of property. Now the property is designated high density. We have provincial policies that are encouraging use of property to the best that we can. I mean, that's provincial policy, strong provincial policy. We also have provincial, regional, and city policies that promote affordable housing. So what this solution here is, this is solving a historical problem about how to develop a remnant parcel and not solving, but at least addressing the affordable housing issue. And it's not affordable housing that is subsidized. This is affordable free market housing. This is real, true affordable housing for people that will invest in it themselves. So we're killing two birds with one stone. And I think that we've got here a wonderful architectural feature, which will enhance not only the neighborhood, but the two adjacent properties. And we're solving a lot of things all at one time. A very difficult site a very challenging site to do. And on top of that, we've got a very sensitive, experienced developer who's prepared to tackle it. And very few developers are prepared to tackle these things, okay? They want to go to where it's easier. Drew has had lots of experience on doing affordable housing, and he's on a challenging sites, and he's the ideal guy to go and do this one. And I'm sure that he'll be able to pull it off on a very quality basis. Thank you.
Thank you, Glenn. So that is all for today. We are going to wrap up the open house now, and I thank you everyone for attending today's open house or watching our live stream from home. And I'll reiterate, if you have any questions or concerns you would like to add after this open house, please contact me by phone, by email, and submit them in writing to me. We will be sure to provide you with a response, and we will certainly be taking all of these issues into consideration while we prepare our report to council. And we will send out a public notice when the public meeting is scheduled. If you received notice of this open house, you will hear about that one. If you didn't receive notice of this open house, but you did hear about it and you would like to hear about the public meeting, please also contact me, and we can ensure that you get that notice when it is sent out. Thanks everyone for your time, and I hope you have a good day. I am going to close down the open house now, and wish everyone a great weekend.